You've probably heard about the surge in refugees illegally entering Canada from the United States. There's been no shortage of sympathetic news coverage in the mainstream media talking about these refugees and their heart-wrenching journey into Canada. There's only one problem with all of this. These people are not refugees. Not yet, anyway. They haven't been screened, vetted, or approved by the Canadian Border Services officials. Their cases have not been reviewed or approved by a Canadian immigration judge. And they haven't demonstrated that they meet the legal standard and definition of a refugee according to international law. And look, the way that these folks are crossing into Canada via its shared border with the United States actually legally disqualifies them from making asylum claims in Canada. That's because Canadian law specifically states that Canada does not accept refugees entering from the United States. Let me repeat, Canada does not accept refugees from the US. Following the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001, the Canadian government, which was led by Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, negotiated something called the Safe Third Country Agreement with the US. This agreement, among other things, requires asylum seekers to make their claim in whichever country they arrive in first. So if a person arrives in Canada, they have to stay in Canada and make their claim there. If they arrive in the US, they must make their claim in the US. A person can't leave one safe country to go to another. So a person is only a refugee according to international legal definitions if they're both fleeing persecution and they're unsafe. Once an asylum seeker arrives in North America, they're no longer unsafe. And this remains the case today, regardless of what anyone thinks of Trump's immigration shakeup. So why is Canada allowing all of this? Well, if these migrants arrived at an official border crossing, their claims would immediately be rejected and they would be deported. Well, that's why these migrants are choosing to cross at fields and ditches in rural Manitoba. By the time they reach civilization, by the time they encounter a cop, they're already on Canadian soil, and the Canadian police don't have the legal jurisdiction to deport them. It's a legal loophole, and it's one that really needs to be closed. Unfortunately, this is a loophole that's also very well known among migrants. Take a look at this CBC report, which discusses the migrant routes that are taken to illegally enter Canada. The report refers to, quote, a network of drivers in the US who transport migrants to the border, drop them off, and then let them walk into Canada to make their refugee claim. You know, there's a more accurate way of describing this illegal network. It's called a human smuggling ring. And the CBC report even admits that there's a profit motive, there's a fair amount of money being made here, and that it's all driven by exploitation. These human traffickers know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly how to get around our existing laws and bilateral agreements. These human smugglers know full well that the Safe Third Country Agreement is only enforced at international airports and at major land border crossings in Canada. They know that if they were to drop off their clients at the border in Buffalo, New York, or Blaine, Washington, that the asylum seeker's claim would be immediately rejected and they'd be turned away. Well, that is why hundreds of refugees are showing up at border fields in rural Manitoba and Quebec. These people are purposely and very deliberately circumventing our immigration laws. Canada needs to put an end to all of this. We don't want human smuggling rings extorting victims of their life savings to facilitate this illegal migration into Canada. We don't want migrants risking their own lives by trekking through the snow in the midst of a bitter Canadian winter. Some are literally losing limbs to frostbite because they weren't properly prepared. Canada is a welcoming and generous country. We have a very proud history of helping refugees and resettling some of the world's most persecuted people. But with that said, we shouldn't be naive. We shouldn't confuse real refugees who are in need of our help and our protection with opportunistic migrants who are using human smugglers to make a mockery of our immigration system. Canada should enforce its immigration laws, including the Safe Third Country Agreement, and send those illegally entering from the US packing. For the Rebel Media, I'm Candace Malcolm. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for a lot more information on immigration and immigration security.